Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today on the show, we have a dynamic man with atomic energy, someone whose story is nothing short of inspiring. He's a former professional basketball player, a practicing pharmacist, a Toastmasters UK and Ireland public speaking champion, and the founder of Speakers Circle, training people in storytelling and communication. So I'm really excited to welcome Paul Donald Nkana Nkana to the show. Welcome, brother.
Let's go. Thanks for having me, man. Thank you.
I love it, Paul.
That was a nice
So,
introduction, hey?
thank you. Thank you. So like I mentioned, all of these different things you do. So my question to you is like, what truly drives you? Like, what keeps you going when things get hard?
So when I was about 10 years old, I grew up in a small town, 40,000 people, about 1,600 kilometers north of Moscow. So a small town by the name of Arkhangelsk. At the age of 10, I was very shy. I was very insecure about myself because I didn't have a voice. Now, at the age of 10, I was walking around town, and then one day I saw a poster. Now, a poster was a massive poster, about 10 foot tall, right, stretching from one side of the wall to another. And on that poster, I saw a man with a bow, a black masculine man, and he was doing the most aerobatic, incredibly powerful and grateful move towards the basketball rim. And I said to myself, who is this guy? Well, I ran into the shop and I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Excuse me, owner, who is that guy on top of the poster?" And the person said, "That is Michael Jordan." So I said to myself, Michael Jordan, goodness gracious, I want to be as apologetic and bold about my being as that man is. So at the age of 10, my friend, I picked up a basketball and I never looked back ever since. So answering your question as to what continues to move me forward is the game of basketball and sports overall, because I'm a big believer and ambassador for the game of basketball, but also for any sports out there, because I truly believe that that builds a foundation in you as a human being, and you can use basketball, football, table tennis, whatever you want to play as a platform for you to build up that confidence. So every time I fell down and I didn't want to do anything, all I needed to do was to pick up that basketball and go shoot some hoops. And that's how I would bring myself back to where I needed to be. Hopefully that answers your question.
I love it. So even I love Michael Jordan a lot, and like you said, Michael Jordan has been a key influence in your life. So what about Michael's quality or trait really inspired you?
I really love his tenacity and his ability to lead other people. Now, the way he was leading other people wasn't by telling them what to do, but he was leading other people by actually doing what every single person in that team was supposed to do. And that's what I loved about him. And that's something that I'm actually learning now, being a pharmacist, now being a speaker, now being a basketball player from time to time, because I'm no longer playing on that level anymore. But you know what I mean? If anybody wants to give me a game of basketball, I'll give it back. So, and that's what I'm learning right now, is that if you want to lead somebody, you don't tell them what to do, but you do it yourself first. And then you encourage other people to get onto the same level as where you are. And that's what I loved about Michael Jordan.
Yeah, amazing. Tell me more. I think I heard in his Last Dance documentary, he did mention that he won't tell any of his team members to do something that he's not doing himself. Makes sense.
Yes.
Tell me more about tenacity, because Michael Jordan was quite obsessive person, like obsessing over his craft. So are you something around that as well in public speaking and all the things you do? Really, you put your like 100% tenacity obsession towards each thing you do?
Yes, I try to approach everything I do in life with the same tenacity and level of detail as I did with the game of basketball. Now, I wasn't the most talented player in the sense of I'm not 6'8". I'm not 6'7". I'm about 6'3". Well, 6'4", maybe with my shoes on. And what I learned from the game of basketball is that sometimes it's not the strongest or the tallest person that wins the game. It's probably the most consistent and the most dedicated and committed person to the game that wins the game. Now, what does tenacity, commitment, dedication mean? Well, somebody who actually studies the game. Study the game. What does it actually mean, study the game of basketball? Well, you can do it in multiple ways. You can come to the practice, you can show up there and shoot some hoops and go home. Or you can come to the practice, shoot some hoops, maybe stay behind, do a bit of stretching, maybe then go to the gym, start lifting weights. Then you need to come back home and recover. That's part of your dedication and commitment, because you need to let your body recover. That's part of studying the game. Then once you get home, you got to pay attention to what you're eating and what you're putting inside your body, because that is also part of studying the game. Then also, what is it that you're listening to? Now, what is your association? Who are some of the people you are allowing into your life? Are they all athletes? Are they all on the same level of commitment and dedication to what they're doing? I'm not saying that you've got to have every single person in your circle being a basketball player. However, you need to have people around you that are moving and pushing towards going somewhere as well. Now, it's also about studying the game, watching movies, watching clips of other people playing, studying other opponents. That is all what I call studying the game. Now, I thought to myself, when I started my journey in public speaking, I thought to myself, I'm going to take that same approach and apply to Toastmasters. I will apply to the game of speaking. And that's what I did. I started studying, not my opponents, but I started studying the greats. People like Les Brown, people like Tony Robbins. I mean, there's a plethora of motivational speakers that you can go to. So I studied their pace. I studied how they would open their speeches. I would study how they welcome other people when they get into the room, right? I study even when it comes to how you set up your room. It's important, right? When you're running your workshops, when you're running your events, are you paying attention to how you are setting up the room in terms of where you allocate those chairs, where you allocate those tables? Are you welcoming people, right? Before you actually get to the stage, what are you doing? Because there's a big part of you doing things before you actually get on stage. That's part of studying the game. So all those little nuggets and things that I picked up from sports, that's why I'm a big ambassador of the game of basketball and any other sports out there. I use those same skills and that same level of detail and applied it into the game of speaking and the game of pharmacy, that matter as well.
I love it. Clearly explained. And now, since you spoke about public speaking, so now take me back when you were not a great speaker, right?
Mm.
And then the journey towards becoming a UK and Ireland public speaking champion.
Oh, that was well, let me take you back to, well, I should take you back to March 2021.
Okay.
I remember like it was yesterday. I was at a networking event in Manchester, England, a networking event organized by YouTube. So at the time I was a pharmacist student and I found myself in the middle of this networking event and I met this chap called Alex. Now, for those of you listening, you don't need to know who Alex is, but Alex, when he saw me, he stuck his hand out and he said, "Hi, my name is Alex." So I said, "Hi, my name is Paul." He says, "Oh, nice to meet you, Paul. Tell me why you're here and what is your dream?" I said to him, I'm a pharmacist student, but I want to be on TV one day. He said, "Paul Donald, I know where you need to be. Let me take you to a public speaking club." Now, I'm thinking to myself, public speaking club. This dude must be out of his mind. I can barely get my words out of my mouth, but he wants me to do what? Public speak. Now, the next thing you know, Alex says, "Mate, I promise you, I won't get you up there to speak." Now, I was thinking to myself, do you know what? If that's the case, I'm in. So the next thing you know, we walked down Oxford Road in Manchester. into this beautiful and massive building called Friends Meeting House. One of those buildings that you never knew existed in the city center of Manchester. So we're entering that building, and I'm seeing so many beautiful faces sat at the front row. There was one spare seat on there, so I take that seat because remember, Alex promised me that I wasn't going to speak that night. So I'm comfortable. I'm sitting in the front, hoping to observe other people speak. Now the meeting starts. Alex pulls the list out, and it says, "Well, fellow Toastmasters and first-time guests, we have a new person in the building. Happens to be my friend Pol Donald Nkana Nkana. Woo! Everybody starts typing. Pol Donald Nkana Nkana. Pol, in 1 to 2 minutes, why don't you tell us about yourself?" Myself. I thought I was here to observe. I'm thinking to myself, well, I can either run or I can take on a challenge. So I get up. My palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. This woman on a sweater already. So I'm getting up on stage. I'm sweating. I open my mouth. Hi, my name is Pa. So I was stood there for about a minute and a half like this, po, until I was able to get my word out. Now, embarrassingly, I just took my seat and I thought to myself, that was the worst ever performance you can think about in the history of Toastmasters. But then everybody got up from their seats and they started clapping. And I thought to myself, why are they clapping? Are they trying to make fun of me? Either they're trying to make fun of me, or they're actually inspired by the fact that I got up there and I opened my mouth and I spoke. And that's exactly what happened. Because at the end of the meeting, everybody went up to me and they said, listen, man, I'm so inspired by what you have just done. You got up there on stage, and despite the fact that you have a speech impediment, you were able to say something. You know how many people are sat there at the back? They have none of what you have, and they're still choosing to be in that seat. And they might remain in that seat for the rest of their lives, but you made a decision to get up that night and speak. And that day, I remembered it like it was yesterday. And since that time, I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe this could be my next platform. Just like I did with the game of basketball, maybe I can use Toastmasters or public speaking overall to start building up that self-image and start building up that confidence. Because for the first time, I thought to myself, this is really like the game of basketball. I have a platform where I can come back to every single week and I can start putting the reps in. I have my teammates around me, my fellow Toastmasters that are there to support me, they're there to encourage me. There's somebody I can mentor, there's somebody I can run with, there's somebody I can learn from. Then we have competitions, international speech contests, we have table topics, we have all sorts of competition going, just like in the game of basketball. Right? I can compete, I can compare myself and match myself against other people. There's a clear progression. I can grow as a speaker and I can end up being on the world stage, delivering my message. And that what got me into Toastmasters, and that what got me to speak, because there was a clear path towards getting to the goal, and there was a clear support system there for me to grow. And that's why I stuck with it. And I made it a mission to come back every single week. And to this day, I'm obsessed. I speak at least once a week. I'm talking about Toastmasters, at least once a week, online, in person. Now I started running my own events with Speaker Circle, and everything that I do under my own brand, I speak more as well. So I get reps all the time. And that allows me to keep the ball rolling. And that's the same principles that I learned from the game of basketball that I'm applying here, and I'm applying in the game of pharmacy as well.
Wow, wow, phenomenal, Paul. Like, now listening to you, like, if listeners would have been listening to the start, they would have never guessed it. So it's just phenomenal what you have done, and so inspiring. So now, since you have shared about overcoming a speech impediment, like, tell me, like, when you had it, how did that affect your confidence, your career, and your identity? And like, what really helped you to overcome it?
Not when I had it. I still have it. I still have it to this
Right.
day. Like in that video, to this day, I still have it. And the fun thing is, I was in the city center today,
Yeah.
and I spoke to a customer service person in the shop, and I stuttered there for about 20 seconds. And he looked at me because even the customer service person was confused because they heard me speak fluently for
Yeah.
probably a good 5 to 10 minutes holding a conversation with them. And then all of a sudden I started stuttering, and then I went back into my flow. Now, that just to tell you that stuttering never really went away. It still stays with me. However, it's a daily choice. It's a daily choice to go out there and speak and battle and fight against it. What I learned over years is that stuttering, I don't know, and I don't know about other people because I've never had any professional help when it comes to stuttering. But what I've learned about myself and when it comes to stuttering is that a lot of it is psychological. Now, there's nothing physical that obstructs me from speaking. However, psychologically, I need to unpack a lot of things and I need to really build myself up in order to be able to go out there and speak fluently. Now, there are days where I don't feel like speaking or opening my mouth, and these are the days where I feel like I'm getting punched and I'm getting knocked down and I'm down there. And every time I open my mouth, I can barely say something. But also there are days when I'm talking of the world, I'm a King Kong and got nothing on me. I don't know if you watched that movie by Denzel Washington, The Training Day. Have you watched that one?
Not yet, but I will
No,
add it
no.
to my list.
Put it on your list. I'm a King Kong and got nothing on me. That's how sometimes, not sometimes, most days I feel nowadays because I choose to speak every week. So to tell you, my friend, that stuttering and the speech impediment, it has never ever disappeared. It has always been there with me. However, choosing to speak and choosing to do something about it every single day, or at least every single week on a big stage, is what allows me to continue improve my flow and to continue also inspire other people. Because sometimes when I go in and speak in colleges and sixth forms, there was one time I went there about 2 years ago, I believe. I went to a college. It was a group of students, about 200, 300 students. I spoke at once, and I'd shared with them my story. And there was one young man that came up to me at the end of my speech, and he was sat at the back. And he didn't say a single word throughout the whole time. It was an interactive workshop. I shared my story, and then I got them up on stage to speak and present things and worked on body language and vocal variety, touching different elements of storytelling as well. And he did not want to participate at all. Not even nothing. He was just sat at the back. And I thought to myself, you know what? He just doesn't like my vibe. Maybe he doesn't like my energy. Not everybody likes Pol Donald. I know it's a surprise, but not everybody likes Pol Donald. I thought to myself, you know what? I'll just leave this person. But then, surprisingly, at the end of the workshop, he came up to me. He looked into my eyes and he said, "Thank you." And I was confused. I thought to myself, "Thank you for what? You were sat at the back. You didn't say anything. You didn't engage at all." But he said, "Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, because I have had a speech impediment." He was 18 at the time. "I have had a speech impediment for a very, very long time. And I never saw anyone sharing their message with such power and confidence and owning that story. Now I'm inspired to do the same." He said, "I didn't have enough courage to do um, any of those activities during the session. However, I'm inspired now to go and change things." So I said to him, "Listen, young man, I'm going to give you some things to go away with." So we exchanged LinkedIn's, and I started sending him tasks every single week. And the tasks were, I said to him one day, he was living in Manchester. I said to him, "One day I want you to go to the city center and I want you to give 10 high fives to 10 random people. Just go. Just go to the city center, give them high five, don't say anything, walk by." The next week, I said to him, listen, I want to say hi to 5 random people that you don't know. I don't care where the conversation goes. I don't care what happens afterwards. All you got to do is to open your mouth and say hi. And every single week I was giving him tasks to do and build up that confidence, because before you speak on a bigger stage, you have to be able to be comfortable with yourself when it comes to one-to-one, right? When it comes to speaking to a smaller group of people, learning how to handle that. And that's what was giving him, small tasks to build up that confidence. Well, we're not in touch anymore. However, I'm sure that those lessons that he learned from those experiences, because we went back and forth when he was still in college, those lessons helped him improve his confidence, and that's what life is all about. I feel like sometimes by me choosing to fight my speech impediment, I get to actually inspire somebody else to do the same. So that's what this speech impediment is really teaching me to do.
Really, really cool. And why do you think these challenges like giving high fives or talking to strangers really helps in terms of building confidence?
Confidence is universal, and fear is universal as well. Meaning, if you're confident in one area, you can take that same confidence and apply in other areas. And that's what I did with the game of basketball. When I became confident, the first thing I did when I moved from the UK, when I moved from Russia to the UK, I picked up the ball. I went to a local park and I found people that played basketball. Now, because I was confident with the way I was playing the game of basketball, I was able to connect with other people. Although I wasn't confident with my ability to communicate with them in English, with my ability to communicate with them, just full stop. However, just because I had the ball with me and I had that confidence in myself, because I knew who I was on the basketball court, I was able to bring that same confidence, that same passion and power when I spoke to them one-to-one. And I did that same thing when I went into pharmacy, because knowing that now a speaker and I use my voice and I know how to utilize my body language and my vocal variety, I use that same confidence from speaking and I apply that same confidence into a consultation with my patients. So when I'm sat in a consultation room, I'm not saying, "No, I don't know. Maybe you should take some paracetamol because you have a headache." No, I said, this is what you've got to do. X, Y, Z, boom, 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 boom. So when the patient leaves my consultation room, they know for a fact what is going to happen. They know for a fact what pill they need to take, and they know for a fact what is going to happen to them after that consultation is over. That confidence is universal. And that's what that's what I learned anyways from my experiences. So if you're confident in one area, you can take that confidence and start applying that confidence in many different areas of your life. And that's how you really, really build a self-image and build that confidence in yourself.
Super clear as well, Paul. Now let's switch gears and talk about storytelling. I'm excited to ask you something on that. So, in your experience, right, what makes a story stick with an audience long after they have heard it?
Well, you've heard some of my stories now. I've shared with you probably a couple during this podcast now. I should probably ask you, what do you think, based on what you've heard?
Well, I've heard your story long before the podcast episode as well, and I still remember a few bits when we were in the workshop. But I think when it resonates with me, when I find it a bit more inspiring, where it's like they had overcome an adversity, I think that's what I find inspiring, and
A
that
hero's
sticks.
journey.
Yeah,
Right.
hero's journey.
Hero's journey. Well, people connect with different parts of storytelling, but I think the important part of storytelling, and by the way, storytelling is everywhere. Everything is a result of a story. If you think about your glasses that you're wearing right now, somebody had to tell a story, a manufacturer of those glasses had to tell a story to the shop that you bought those glasses from, right? The airports that actually got, by the way, new airport, guys.
Looks
Got
good.
new airports. Steve Jobs had to tell us, was it Steve Jobs? Well, don't quote me on that one, but the CEO of Apple, daily, they they have to tell stories to their employees because first it's in their heads. Remember that every single story you have to take it's a thought, it's in your head. Now it comes down to your ability to communicate that story, take it, extrapolate that story out of your head and put it into someone else's head. But how do you do that? So you have to find a way to connect with other people, and that's what stories are all about. So you have to find out why, and that's probably why you connected with my story, the hero's
Yeah.
journey, in the sense of a story of overcoming. So the fact that you connect with my story tells me straight away that probably you have gone through some challenges in your life as well, and maybe you, in some sort of way, saw yourself through my story. Now, I'm not saying we have the same experiences because I've not actually properly heard your story. However, I'm pretty sure that you probably had some obstacles and challenges in your way. But just because you heard me talk about my challenges and my obstacles and how I was able to overcome them, there was something within you that was steering this whole thing up and telling probably me or telling yourself that yes, I'm that same person and I have overcome this and this and this. And that's why we were able to connect, because you saw me as an overcomer, but the fact that you connected with me tells me straight away that you are an overcomer too, because otherwise we would have not connected in the first place. So that's why I think what makes stories beautiful is that when you open up your mouth and you start sharing those stories. Now, it's important also how you share those stories, because if you're just speaking facts out there, people don't connect with facts. People don't connect with facts. People connect with stories, right? What does it actually mean? Well, you have to emotionally connect with people. How do you do that? You've got to be descriptive in your language. You have to paint a picture for people. You have to place people where you are at and take them on a journey. The best analogy I can think about is a car. If you think about a car, what is your favorite car brand, by the way? What is
I
your
would
favorite
say
car brand?
any, like Lamborghini. Let's say Lamborghini.
Lamborghini. Let's say Lamborghini. So let's say you've got a Lamborghini. Now, you are in the driver's seat. You're driving from point A to point B. Whatever story you're sharing, let's take the example of my story where I told you how I'm still to this day overcoming my speech impediment. Now, I'm doing it on day to day, in the sense of on day to day, I'm battling that. I'm battling that every single day. In other words, I'm driving from point A to point B and back, from point A to point B and back. So I've done that journey multiple times. I mean, over the past 4 years, I've driven from point A to point B pretty much every single day. Now, I know what it feels and what it means to actually live with it. Now, my job as somebody who's sharing my story with you is to take you on a journey with me. Right now, you're not a passenger of mine. Right now, you're out there. You're waiting. I'm waiting for you to get in the car with me. So the moment you get in the car with me, that's when I start driving you to that point B and bring you back safely. So once I've done that journey with you, that means you're
Mhm.
on board. We are connected. But the question is, how do I get you inside my car? And that's what stories do. They allow you to get the passenger, who's not your passenger yet, but get them in the car with you and drive them safely and then bring them back. So that by the time you brought them back, it was an Uber-like experience. Uber X we have Uber, what do you got? Uber
Uber luxury,
Prime,
let's say.
Uber Luxury, the expensive one, 40, 50 quid per ride. That's the kind of experience you
Yeah.
want to give them. But you need to convince them to get in the car with you in the first place. And that's what stories do. They allow you to get
Mm.
those people in the car with you, and then you drive them there safely.
Interesting. I love the analogy, by the way. Makes it really clear. So let me ask you now, like, what's one of the most powerful stories you have heard, or your favorite story, and what were the key elements that maybe resonated with you?
Most powerful story. My story is the most powerful story. The
Love
story
it.
about myself and overcoming. You've got to be your biggest cheerleader. But on a serious note, I mean, my story, of course, but then also I have a mentor when it comes to speaking and Toastmasters overall. His name is DTM. Well, he is not. His name is not DTM Tracy Baker. His name is Tracy Baker, but he's a 6 times DTM, maybe even 10 times DTM. He lives in Dayton, Ohio. He's a former US Air Force man. He's done a lot of interesting things. He traveled around the world from one military station to another. But throughout that whole time, he had always and has always been part of Toastmasters, different countries, different clubs. So he's been a member of Toastmasters for about 30 years now. And I want to give him some credit on this podcast in particular, because that man has helped me a lot to find my voice. And the way he did it is by sharing his story with me. Because I remember one day when I already became a member of Toastmasters Manchester Communicators. So remember, I told you about March 2021. So after that meeting, I joined them. And on one of those days where we did it, because we had our meetings hybrid, so it was in person and online. I was away that day. It was on a Monday, and I plugged in online. And what we used to do for our online guests, we used to plug in 30 minutes before the meeting was about to start, so that guests online have an opportunity to mingle, just like you would do when you run your Toastmasters meeting in person. And in one of those meetings, because that's what Tracy Baker does, he just travels the world like Santa Claus. He just knocks on your door and tells you his story, and then gives you that gift of life through his story. And I thought, the moment he opened his mouth, I thought to myself, and he shared his story about his military life, and then how he used to struggle with his confidence, and how he used to get stuck on his words. And I was listening there, and I couldn't understand. I didn't even care what he said, but it was the energy, and it was the passion that was coming across the screen. And I couldn't believe. I messaged him, direct messaged him straight away. And I said, listen, man, I don't know where you are from. I don't know what you do. I mean, now I know what you do, but I want to connect with you. And I want you to invite me to your Toastmasters Club, Dayton Night Communicators, which I'm a member of since 2021. I've been a member of 2 clubs, Dayton Night Communicators in the United States of America. We do our meetings every other Thursday online. This is what I have been doing ever since then, and Manchester Communicators in person. But that Tracy Baker, when he shared his story, I really resonated and connected with him, similar to my story. But that's once again goes back to the power of storytelling. But he's a couple of years ahead of me, a couple times. Well, we're not going to go into details, but the fact of the matter is, he inspired me by opening his mouth and sharing his story. And that's essentially, well, that's arguably one of the most interesting stories that I've heard. You probably need to get him on your podcast one day and hear that story by yourself, because, I mean, it's best coming from his mouth, not from my mouth.
Roger that. I'll shoot him a message on LinkedIn. I'll get him on as well, for sure. What's your message for someone who tells, oh, I don't have a story to tell? So what's your response to them?
Good. Good. You don't have a story to tell? Well, start somewhere. Start now. Start jotting down and writing down those stories. Look, the thing is, that's something that I experienced at the beginning of my Toastmasters journey. 4 or 5 speeches in. Remember, I said to you, I give speeches every single week when I'm in Toastmasters. When Toastmasters is on, I give speeches every single week. Now, when I just started my journey, I was giving speeches in person and Dayton Night Communicators online. By my 4th speech, I thought I was done. I thought I had no messages, no speeches to deliver, until I learned one powerful thing, which is called a bank of stories. Now, a bank of stories is about collection. It's about collecting those stories, collecting your everyday stories, and jotting them down somewhere. Now, I use my laptop. I've got a Microsoft document where I would jot down my thoughts, maybe once a week. I've not been consistent with it recently. However, I've had probably by now, I've built up an 80-page document. 80.
Wow.
80.
And all of those are speeches.
All of those is just my thoughts or recollection of stories, things that happened to me. The question that you have to ask yourself is, well, When was the last time you went on a date? That's a story, right? You've got that question in your mind. Sit down maybe once a week and start asking yourself those questions. How was my first date? What was it like? What was my first kiss like? Or maybe what was my first job interview like? Right. You've got to have, because you don't know who you're going to talk to and you don't know who you're going to connect with. Remember, some people think about my biggest business connections came from everyday conversations. They never came from, oh, tell me about the importance of AI. I mean, those things are important, and you get to that point where you do start talking about business, but first and foremost, you have to connect with somebody as a human being. And that's what I mean by that. How do you connect with somebody as a human being? By telling them everyday stories. Well, tell me about your first date. Tell me about the food that you hate. Tell me about the food that you like. Have you thought about those things? Tell me about the school that you went. What was that experience like? Tell me about the first sport, your first friend. You never know. You have to pull those stories out of your pockets, out of your bank of stories, and use those stories to connect with other people, but then also connect with your audience on stage. And that's what it's all about. So for those people who are struggling to come up with ideas and stories, my answer to you is this: start jotting your stories down. Do this challenge for me, please. Once a week, I want you to open your Microsoft document, iPhone notes, whatever you have, Google Pages, whatever you have out there. Dedicate 1 hour every Sunday. Let's say every Sunday, 1 hour, where you just sit down in peace and you start asking yourself a question. Ask yourself questions. Ask ChatGPT to prompt you. You can ask ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT, I want you to come up with 100 questions about a human being, something that can help me recollect my human being experiences. ChatGPT will give you a list instantly. Things like I've just given to you: dates, maybe the first book that you bought, the most horrible experience that you had in your life, your first car that you bought, your first girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever that is. Jot those things down, but jot them as stories. Now, stories, not complete stories, but just jot things down. Just type something in. It doesn't have to be a structured story at that stage. Just jot things down, write things down. And then when it's time for you to speak, right, you can go back to your notes and then polish those stories, right? Tonight, I want to give a talk about my first girlfriend. Go on your notes, type girlfriend. That paragraph will come up. Now it's your job to polish it up, make it an introduction, main body, conclusion. Boom, your speech is ready. Out there, give your speech. The first speech is not going to be great, and you have to accept that, right? The first speech isn't going to be great. As a matter of fact, 90% of my speeches are probably nowhere near to the speech that I gave when I won District 71 and became the UK and Ireland champion of Toastmasters 2024, right? However, if you look at any successful person out there, because before I gave that speech that won me District 71 in 2024, up until that point, that we're talking about 2024, I joined Toastmasters 2021, and I told you I've been speaking every single week. So I've given at least, by the way, in person and online. So we have 52 weeks in a year, my friend, 52 weeks in a year. Okay, of course, maybe some weeks I missed because Christmas, Easter, other things going. Let's just say roughly I gave 30 to 40 speeches in person, 30 to 40 speeches online. That's roughly about 60 to 70 speeches, 6 to 8 speeches per year. Times that by 4. That's close to 320 speeches that I gave over the past 4 years. Now, only that particular speech won me District 71. Now, if you do the maths, 1 out of 300, let's say even 300 speeches roughly, that's 1 out of 300. What is the percentage? By the way, we should work it out. That wasn't a rhetorical question. I genuinely want to work out what is the percentage. Let's work it out right now. Okay, that's 0.333333333. So for those of you who just joined Toastmasters, thinking that your first speech will be the District 71 winning speech, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this, that is
Yeah.
0.333333. That's your probability of having a District 71 winning speech with the first take. Now, for those of you who are thinking my first speech, first of all, I don't know what to talk about, but then secondly, thinking that I'm supposed to know what I'm going to talk about and I'm supposed to give an incredible speech first time, numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. 0.33333. It doesn't have to be you. In my case, it was 0.333. In your case, it might be just that one. But you have to remember that you need to go through some grind. You're gonna go through some grind, choosing what you want to talk about, choosing and finding ways to connect with that speech, and then making iterations and making sure that the speech is getting better, refining that speech over and over and over again until you get to that District 71 winning speech and beyond.
Wow, I love it. And I think I'm going to take this as a challenge, by the way, because I want to give more speeches next year. And I think it's going to also help us with improvisation as well, right? Because now you don't have any questions I'm asking you. You have all the bank of stories already in your head of
Absolutely.
what that makes sense. And then you also mentioned that you have to keep reiterating your speech, keep getting better. So my question to you is like, how do you take feedback and how do you implement it? What's your approach to feedback and applying it to your speeches, for example?
You have to take, first of all, well, the simple answer to this is mentorship. Simple as that. You have to find somebody that you can look up to as a speaker and listen to them. In my case, it's Tracy Baker, like I said, 6 times DTM. In my case, it's Mike Pure, that most of you might not know, but he's a member of Toastmasters, strictly Harrogate Toastmasters, an incredible human being that helped me polish my speech alongside Tracy Baker in the United States of America to win District 71, right? So you have to find, first of all, individuals that can help you polish your speech. You don't want to have 10,000 people, 10,000 individuals helping you polish your speech because you cannot go in 10,000 directions at the same time. All of them will have their take on what they think is good. Therefore, in my case, I just narrowed it down to 2 people because I felt like those 2 people, DTM Tracy Baker knows me on a level beyond just a speaker. He's now my mentor. He helps me with confidence and other things. Although he's not a pharmacist, but he's just overall became my friend. So he knows me very well. And he knows my style. That's why I knew I needed. Well, and to this day, I've always had him as somebody that is shaping my way of communication because he knows me as an individual and he knows my heart and knows how I flow as a speaker. Mike Pugh is an incredible guy. He's a very strategic and tactical human being. He knows how to tweak something and polish something to that level of excellence. And with him, we've gone through so many. The speech that I gave in at my club level in that District 71 to compared to the speech that I gave at District 71 finals was 2 different speeches. It was day and night. But that I refined that speech at least maybe 15 times as I went along. It was a completely different speech. The speech that got me District 71 championship. So to answer your question first, you have to have individuals. Choose one. If you cannot choose one, choose 2. I wouldn't go more with more than that. 1 ideally or 2 people. Then you have to have a strong collective. Find a club where people won't just sugarcoat things, but will tell you how it is. Now, in that case, you have to be very, very careful who you're listening to as well. Because if a first-time Toastmasters member is going to tell you that, I think your speech is good, I think you need to change this, maybe you do, maybe you don't, because they might be right to say, they might be right to say, look, I want you to be a little bit louder there, I want you to be a bit quieter there, I want you to resonate with people a bit better. and in this part, maybe in this part, I think you should have included this. Maybe they're right. But the question is, are they right? Is it right feedback for the level that you're competing at? And that's something that I learned last year. Because remember, I told you I won District 71 in 2024, but last year I came up short at the division level, and I finished third at the division level. Now, the mistake I made, in my opinion, was that my speech wasn't for the level I was competing at. Now, bear in mind, last year, in my corner, I had a world champion. I had a person who finished third in the World Championships of Toastmasters. Roger Caesar, it was, alongside DTM Tracy Baker. I had and Mike Pugh as well. So my speech was a strong speech. However, one lesson that I learned is that you have to craft your speech to the level that you're competing at, which I think I did very well in 2024, but maybe not so well in 2025. So that is another important part. You have to find an environment where you're practicing your speech at and make sure that that environment emulates the level that you're competing at currently. For example, if you're competing at the area level, just find a club where people that are giving you feedback have done area contests in the past and they know exactly what it takes to win the area contest. If you're trying to get to the division level, go to the club where you have people giving you feedback that have been to a division level before. They've watched speakers speak there, and they know exactly what you need to be looking for. That's what I would recommend. Once again, to recap, find somebody, an individual or two, that can help you individually get to that place, but then also find an environment that is appropriate to the level that you're competing at. Combine the two, but at the end of the day, listen, they cannot give a speech for you. At the end of the day, it's on you. You can have the world champion of public speaking in your corner. You can have 10 world champions. You can have Les Brown in your corner and Tony Robinson, but they are not going to give a speech for you. It's got to be you. So at the end of the day, whatever they give you in there, you have to take it and you have to make it yours in a way that resonates with your style, with your flow, because my flow is different from yours. Your flow is different from mine. That doesn't make you a worse speaker or a better speaker than me. That just makes you you. And you have to find that way of taking the feedback, mold it all together, and make it you. And then deliver it on stage. But that's a completely other story when it comes to body language and all other things.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Super clear. So last question before we wrap up,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So give us some practical advice, like someone who needs to start building a story from scratch, how they can go about, etc. The structure, the message, the emotion, everything. Like, give us a practical advice, a practical tool that you can give for listeners.
If somebody builds a story from scratch, my first piece of advice, like I said, will be start with a bank of stories. First of all, you got to have a foundation for your story. So once you get that part out of the way, the next thing you want to think about is what kind of you have to do your research. Who are you speaking to, first and foremost, right? You sort of need to reverse engineer your journey. So in a sense, if I'm speaking to students, sixth form students, if I'm speaking to a bunch of professionals, young professionals, or a bunch of Toastmaster people, my stories are going to be different. So you sort of need to identify, do your homework, identify who you're speaking to, and then reverse engineer that journey. That would be your step number 2. So you have your bank of stories, step number 1. Second step, like I said, you have to do the homework, identify who you're speaking to, start reverse engineering that. Then based on that, you will start crafting your story that you've got in your bank. If I'm speaking to a room of young professionals, 20 to 30 years old or 20 to 35 years old, well, think about what is it that they like? What is it that they're going to resonate with? Every single speech ideally needs to have some sense of humor in there, right? Regardless of who you're speaking to. But these are all the ingredients that you will do as you reverse engineer things. Now, when it comes to every single story has introduction, main part, and conclusion. When it comes to introduction, you have to paint a picture for your audience. So be as descriptive as you possibly can. How do you do that? Start asking yourself open-ended questions. How, when, why, all those things that will open up your mind and open up your audience's mind. That should be your introduction. The focus of your introduction is asking the story that you've got. This is just raw material. So the questions that you want to ask yourself, how, especially for the introduction part, how, when, why, who, then based on those questions, you can start building up a picture for your introduction as you're telling people your story. Then as you get to the main part, you have to think about what structure you're going to run with. There are multiple structures that I talk about in my workshops that I run here in Leeds. I do that in person, where we go with different kinds of structures for your main part. It can be 3 main points. It can be maybe past, present, and future. It can be that allow you to highlight the hero story in a sense. Talk about your past, present, and future. It might be for and against, where maybe you're trying to whereas one side is fighting the other side, right? It could be something else, but you have to think about. I mean, it's basically another full um 2-hour workshop on different stories and things that you can, how you can structure that part. But this is some of the elements you can start thinking about, right? Which structure I'm going to run with, depending on how much time I have got, which is important as well, right? And depending once again on my audience, because everything has to be about the audience, right? That's what we reverse engineer our journey. And then when you come to conclusion, you have to think about, well, the basics, I guess the 3 important things. How are you going to land your message? First of all, you have to let your audience know that you're coming to a conclusion, which is important because most people, in most cases, audiences do not know whether they've come to a conclusion here or not. How do you do that? Well, let them know by using linking words. Things like, the reason why I'm telling you this is that, and now that we get to a conclusion, here's my point, right? So you need to reward your audience. You need to let your audience know that now that you've listened to me patiently for 50, 40, 30 minutes, here's the nugget. Here's something that I'm going to reward you with, right? And then as you get to conclusion, think about what you're going to do with the information they've given to them. Are you going to call them to action, right? Call them to action to do something with the information that you've given to them? Will it be a rhetorical question, something that you want to leave them to ponder upon and think about? Is it going to be a summary of your story? What is it going to be? But you have to, conclusion is as powerful as the introduction and also as powerful as the main part. But how you start is how you end. Introduction, you've got to nail that down. You've got 10 to 15 seconds to connect with your audience. Out of those 3 parts that I've just given and highlighted, I would say introduction, you really need to nail that down, and conclusion. Because remember, that's going to be the last thing that people will walk away with. And the important part with that is that it's not about what you say at the end, but it's about how you make other people feel. So they might not
That's powerful.
necessarily they might not necessarily remember the words that you say, but the energy that you transmit in that conclusion is what they will remember for the rest of their life. They might never see you again. And it's not about the stage. It could be in the elevator or lift. It could be in the car. It could be in the gym. It could be whoever you're speaking to, right? It could be somebody on the street. They might not necessarily remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So you have to remember that. So that's why introduction, conclusion are very, very important, in my opinion. And then that's what allows you to sort of build up that story and build up that juice that then intensifies the main part. And once you got all those elements together, you have to repeat, and rehearse, and do it with yourself, do it with your friends, do it with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parents, whoever you can, your dogs, your cats, use whoever you want to use, put some work in. There's no such thing as, off the cuff. All the incredible speakers, all the incredible artists, stand-up comedians, if you pay attention to, so I'm going to be off tangent, but I really want to bring that point because it's important. If you think about a comedian, let's say take a person like Jamie Foxx. If you go on YouTube and you search Jamie Foxx, how he met Kanye West, and you will see him going from one late show to another, and he tells exactly the same story every single late night show, and it's exactly the same story. How he didn't come up with that story just there. He rehearsed that story multiple times, and all he did was he tweaked the conclusion, he tweaks the introduction slightly, but the main part of the story remains the same. So all those people, they have prepared, they've polished things thousands of times. Kevin Hart, Chris Rock, thousands of times comedians, they spoke at the local pub, at the local bar, friends, cards, dogs, before they got to the arena of 20,000 people. And that's exactly what you're going to do with your stories. Rehearse them once you got them together and start putting those things into work.
Super, super clear. I love it, Paul. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and being a guest. It's been really insightful.
Yes, sir.
And thank you. And for our listeners, I'll link Paul's all social media handles in the show notes and also link Speaker Circle Eventbrite link. So if you're interested to join any workshops, you can join. I will be joining Paul next year for any workshop that are happening in Manchester. I will be there.
By the way, all our work, because I'm based in Leeds right now, so all our workshops are in Leeds, but we're coming to Manchester next year. And also at some point we'll be potentially coming, because you're based in Sheffield, right?
No, I'm based in Manchester.
But you're based in Manchester for some reason. Yeah, okay, sorry. Well, Manchester, we're coming to Manchester 2026. I mean, next year, New Year, we're coming to Manchester March time. Potentially we'll start running our workshops over there. So
I
keep
will
an
be there.
eye. Keep an eye on Manchester Leeds. We run them here. We have been running them for the past year, a year and a half, in-person workshops focusing on different areas of communication. I mean, presence, stage presence. We're talking about body language, vocal variety, storytelling, talking about networking. We're talking about mindset, many different things that you use at your workplace, in your relationships. So Manchester, we're coming. Leeds, we're already here. Manchester, we're coming.
I'll be there for the Manchester event, guys.
Let's
And
go,
thank you,
sir.
Paul.
Let's go.
Thank you once again.
Thanks for
Yes.
having me. And by the way, you're an incredible interviewer. Please keep going. I've been watching a couple of your shows and videos. I think what you're doing is incredible, and I think we need to give you some credit for that, because not everybody wants to put some time aside and not only to record something and make it happen, because it takes work as well. But then also, I think thinking about other people, because at the end of the day, I think what you're doing is not only helping maybe you to learn things, but also helps other people too. So keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I've seen
Love it.
some other episodes of yours, and definitely it's something that you're doing very well, something that you've been gifted with. So keep rolling
Thank
with
you,
that.
sir. Thank you,
And then
sir.
one day your podcast will be a #1 podcast in the UK. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. And then we're going to have you again for episode 2, right? We're going to do it
Come
together
on.
in
I'll be a
person.
returning guest. I'll be a returning guest.
Definitely in person. Done.
All right,
Thank
sir.
you, everyone. Thank you.
No, thank you.